Emma stood at the front door of the old house, her hands shaking as she turned the rusty key. The Victorian home looked tired and sad, with its faded blue paint and overgrown garden. She had not been here for 2 years, not since that terrible fight with Gran. The door creaked open, and Emma stepped inside. The familiar smell hit her right away, lavender soap and old books, just like she remembered from her childhood. But now there was something else, a dusty emptiness that made her heart heavy. Gran was really gone. Emma walked slowly through the sitting room, her footsteps loud in the quiet house. Everything was exactly as Gran had left it. The floral teacups still sat on the kitchen table. The knitting basket sat by the window, with a half-finished scarf still on the needles. It was as if Gran had just stepped out for a moment and would be back any minute. But Emma knew better. Gran would never come back, and the last words they had spoken to each other had been angry ones. Emma wiped her eyes and started up the narrow wooden stairs. Each step groaned under her feet. She was here to pack up Gran's things and sell the house. That was what the lawyer had told her to do. Emma was the only family left, so everything belonged to her now. The second floor felt even more lonely then. Downstairs, Emma peeked into Gran's bedroom. With its flowered wallpaper and lace curtains, she could not go in there yet. It hurt too much. Instead, she climbed the even narrower stairs to the attic. She had played up here as a little girl, building forts out of old furniture and dress-up clothes. Back then, Gran would bring her tea and cookies on a little tray, and they would have pretend tea parties among the dusty treasures the attic was. Darker now, with only one small window letting in the grey afternoon light. Emma felt round for the light switch and found it. The old bulb flickered on, casting long shadows across the room. Boxes and old furniture filled every corner. There was Gran's old sewing machine, covered with a white sheet. There were trunks full of old clothes and photo albums. Emma saw her old rocking horse, the one Gran had bought for her 6th birthday. Emma started moving things round, trying to make sense of what to keep and what to give away. Behind an old wooden wardrobe, something caught her eye. It was a small wooden box, about the size of a book. It had beautiful carved flowers on the top and brass corners that had turned green with each. Emma pulled the box out and set it on an old table. It was heavier than she expected. She tried to open it, but it was locked. There was a small keyhole in the front, shaped like a heart. Emma shook the box gently. She could hear peepers rustling inside, and something small and hard that might be a key. Her heart started beating faster. What had Gran kept locked away up here? Emma looked round the attic for something to open the box with, but then she noticed something. One corner of the box looked loose. She worked at it carefully with her fingernails until the wood gave way just enough for her to peek inside. She could see envelopes tied with faded pink ribbon. Lots of them, and they looked old, with yellowed edges and careful handwriting on the fronts. Emma worked at the corner until she could reach in and pull out the bundle of letters. Her hands were shaking as she untied the ribbon. The letters were arranged in order by date, with the oldest one on top. Emma's heart stopped. The first envelope was addressed to my dearest Emma in Gran's careful handwriting, but the date on the envelope made Emma sit down hard on an old chair. It was dated 28 years ago, the exact day Emma was born. With trembling fingers, Emma opened the envelope and pulled out several pages of cream-colored paper. Gran's handwriting was younger and stronger than Emma remembered it. The letter began, "My darling granddaughter, you are only 1 day old, but already I love you more than all the stars in the sky. I am writing this letter to tell you about the dreams I have for your future." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she read. Gran wrote about hoping Emma would be kind and brave. She wrote about the little room she had prepared for Emma's visits, with yellow walls because she did not know yet if Emma would prefer pink or blue. She wrote about teaching Emma to bake cookies and tend the garden. Emma kept reading through her tears. Gran had written about the importance of family, about forgiveness, about always believing in yourself even when others doubt you. At the end, Gran wrote, "I hope that someday, when you are old enough to understand, we will read this together and laugh about how worried I was about being a good grandmother to you." Emma looked at the other letters. There were dozens of them, one for each year of Emma's life. Even after their fight, Gran had kept writing. At the bottom of the box, Emma found a small brass key and a folded piece of paper. The paper had just one line written on it in Gran's shaky handwriting from her final years, for the stories that need to continue. Emma held the key and the letters close to her heart and cried for everything they had lost and everything they might still find. Emma could not sleep that first night. She sat in Gran's old kitchen with the box of letters on the table in front of her. The house felt different now. Not empty, but full of secrets waiting to be discovered. She made herself a cup of tea the way Gran had taught her and opened the second letter. This one was written when Emma was 1 year old. Gran wrote about Emma's first steps and how she had clapped her tiny hands when she walked across tea. His sitting room. But then Gran's words changed. Becoming sadder, she wrote about how hard it was to raise Emma's mother alone after Grandpa died in that car accident. Emma put the letter down. She had never known much about her grandfather. Her mother never talked about him, and Gran only mentioned him in passing. Now Emma was learning that he had died when her mother was just 15 years old. The next morning, Emma spread all the letters out on Gran's dining table in order by date. There were 28 letters total, one for each year of Emma's life. Some were long, some were short, some were written in Gran's strong young handwriting. Others in the shaky letters of her later years. Emma picked up the letter from when she was 5 years old. Gran wrote about the day Emma had helped her plant roses in the back garden. Emma remembered that day now. How proud she had felt to have her own little patch of dirt to work in. But Gran's letter also mentioned something Emma had forgotten. How worried Gran was about money that year. Gran wrote, "The electric bill came today, and I do not know how I will pay it. But when I see Emma's face light up as she waters her little flowers, I remember why I work so hard. Some things are more important than money." Emma felt tears in her eyes. She had never known that Gran struggled with money. Gran had always seemed to have everything under control. Always had cookies in the jar and presents at Christmas. The letter from Emma's 10th birthday made Emma laugh and cry at the same time. Gran wrote about the school art contest that Emma had won. Emma remembered the painting. It was of Gran's house with the garden in full bloom. She had worked on it for weeks, trying to get the colors of the roses just right. Gran wrote, "Emma won first place with her painting of our house. When I saw it hanging in the school hallway, I cried right there in front of everyone. She sees our home as something beautiful and special. Maybe I am doing something right after all." But then Gran's letter turned sad again. She wrote about working 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and working at the village shop during the day. She wrote about falling asleep in her chair and waking up with a sore neck, about counting coins to buy Emma's school supplies. Emma picked up the letter from when she was 16. This was during the time when Emma had been angry with the world, angry with her mother for working so much, angry with Gran for what she thought were old-fashioned rules. Gran wrote, "Emma is going through a difficult time. She thinks I do not understand her, but I remember being 16 and feeling like the whole world was against me. I try to be patient, but sometimes I say the wrong things. I pray that she will know how much I love her, even when we disagree." The letter went on to describe how proud Gran was of Emma's art. How she saved every drawing Emma made and hung them on the refrigerator, even when Emma said they were stupid and childish. Emma remembered those years differently. She had thought Gran was too strict, too old to understand. She never realized that Gran was trying so hard to do the right thing. The letters from Emma's college years were full of pride and worry. Gran wrote about staying up late to help Emma with scholarship applications, about working extra hours to help pay for Emma's art supplies. She wrote about missing Emma terribly when she went away to London for school. But Gran also wrote about the joy she felt when Emma called home, about how she bragged to everyone in the village about Emma's success in art school. Emma learned that Gran had kept a scrapbook of all Emma's college projects, even the ones Emma had thrown in the trash. The hardest letter to read was the one written just after their last fight 2 years ago. Emma's mother had just died, and Emma had been angry and hurt. She had said terrible things to Gran, blamed her for not being there enough when Emma's mother was sick. Gran wrote, "Emma is in pain, and pain makes people say things they do not mean. I know she does not really hate me, but her words cut deep. I want to call her and tell her I'm sorry, that I love her no matter what, but I am afraid she will hang up on me. I am a foolish old woman who does not know how to fix what is broken." At the bottom of this letter, Gran had added a note. "I drive by her flat sometimes, hoping to see her. I want to knock on her door, but I do not know what to say. How do you apologize for failing someone you love?" Emma put the letter down and sobbed. All this time, she had thought Gran did not care. She had thought Gran was too proud to apologize. But Gran had been just as hurt and confused as Emma was. Emma looked through the box again and found something else, a large envelope filled with newspaper clippings. Every article about Emma's work as a graphic designer was there, every photo from her art shows, even screenshots of her social media posts that friends must have shared with Gran. Gran had never stopped following Emma's life. Emma held the
Never
small
stopped
brass
being
key
proud
in
of
her palm
her,
and wondered
never
what
stopped
it might
loving
open.
her.
She had searched through the attic but found nothing that needed this particular key. Maybe it belonged to something downstairs. She walked into Gran's bedroom for the first time since arriving at the house. The room still smelled like Gran's lavender soap. The bed was made perfectly, with the blue quilt Gran had sewn by hand years ago. On the dresser sat Gran's old jewelry box and a framed photo of Emma as a little girl. Emma noticed a small wooden desk in the corner by the window. It had 3 tiny drawers with brass handles. The key looked like it might fit the locks on those drawers. Emma tried the key in the first drawer, and it opened with a soft click. Inside the drawer were receipts and cancelled checks, all neatly organized in small bundles tied with string. Emma picked up one bundle and looked through it. The receipts were from the local grocery store, but they were made out to different names: the Wilson family, the Johnsons, the Smiths. Each receipt had a note in Gran's handwriting, for the children's lunches or until Dad finds work again. Emma opened the second drawer and found more receipts. These were from the village pharmacy and the doctor's office. Again, they were made out to different families, not to Gran. One receipt was for children's medicine for the Garcia family. Another was for glasses for someone named Mrs. Peters. The third drawer was full of letters from people Emma did not recognize. She picked up one letter and read it. It was from a woman named Sarah, thanking Gran for helping pay for her daughter's school uniform. Another letter was from a man named Bill, thanking Gran for the groceries she had bought when he lost his job. Emma sat down hard in Gran's desk chair. She could not believe what she was seeing. Gran had been secretly helping families all over the village for years. But how could she afford to do this when Emma knew Gran had struggled with money herself? Emma decided she needed to learn more. She put the letters and receipts in a bag and walked to the village center. Millbrook was a small place where everyone knew everyone else. If Gran had been helping people, others would know about it. Her first stop was Mrs. Wilson's house on Cherry Lane. Mrs. Wilson was an older woman with grey hair and kind eyes. When Emma introduced herself as Margaret's granddaughter, Mrs. Wilson's face lit up with joy. "Oh, my dear," Mrs. Wilson said, "your grandmother was an angel. Please, come in and have some tea." Mrs. Wilson led Emma into a cozy sitting room and told her story. Her husband had been sick for 2 years before he died, and the medical bills had used up all their savings. Her youngest son needed school supplies for his final year. But Mrs. Wilson had no money left. "One day I found a bag on my doorstep," Mrs. Wilson explained. "Inside were all the supplies my son needed. Books, pens, paper, even a new backpack. There was no note, but I knew it was your grandmother. When I tried to thank her, she just said it was what neighbors do for each other." Emma's next stop was the corner shop where she bought milk and bread. Tom, the shop owner, was a thin man with a beard who looked to be about 40 years old. When Emma mentioned Gran, his eyes filled with tears. "Your Gran saved my life." Tom said quietly, 3 years ago I got very sick with pneumonia. I live alone, and I could not get out of bed for 2 weeks. Every single day, your grandmother came by with a thermos of soup and fresh bread. She also did my shopping and brought me medicine from the pharmacy. If she had not taken care of me, I might have died." Emma walked to the village school next. She asked to speak with the headmaster about Gran's work with children. The secretary directed her to a classroom where a man with brown hair and gentle eyes was cleaning up after the school day. "You must be Emma," the man said with a warm smile. "I'm Robert Davies. I teach year 3 here. Your grandmother talked about you all the time." Robert told Emma how Gran had volunteered at the school for over 10 years. She helped children who struggled with reading, staying after school to work with them one-on-one. She also helped families who could not afford books by buying them herself and giving them to the children as gifts. Your grandmother believed that every child deserved a chance to learn. Robert said, "She used to tell me that words had magic in them." She said if children could learn to read and write, they could tell their own stories and change their lives. Emma met many other people that day. Young Lucy, who is now 18 and starting university, explained how Gran had tutored her in reading when she was struggling in primary school. Father James from the village church told Emma about Gran's anonymous donations to help families pay for food and heating bills. Each person had a different story, but they all had the same message. Gran had been the heart of the community, always helping others quietly and without asking for recognition. As the sun began to set, Emma walked back to Gran's house with a new understanding. The house had not just been a home. It had been a place where kindness lived, where help was always available for anyone who needed it. Gran had made the whole village her family, and she had taken care of them all. Emma sat in Gran's kitchen with the real estate papers spread out on the table. The agent had said the house would sell quickly. The money would help Emma pay off her debts and start fresh somewhere else. But every time she picked up her pen to sign, she thought about all the stories she had heard in the village. This house had been more than just a home. It had been a place where miracles happened, where kindness lived, where people found help when they needed it most. How could she sell something so special? Emma put down her pen and called Robert at the school. When he answered, she could hear children laughing in the background. "Robert, I need your help," Emma said. "I want to do something with Gran's house, but I don't know how to start." Robert came over that evening with a thermos of tea and a notebook full of ideas. They sat in Gran's sitting room and talked about what the house could become. Robert suggested turning it into a community centre where people could come for classes and meetings. The village has needed something like this for years, Robert said. We could have reading programs for children, computer classes for older people, and art workshops. Your grandmother would have loved the idea. Emma felt excited for the first time in months. She was good at designing things. It was her job. After all, she could picture how the rooms might look with bright paint and comfortable furniture. The sitting room could be a library. The dining room could be a classroom. The kitchen could serve tea and biscuits to visitors. But the most important thing would be Gran's wooden letterbox. Emma wanted it to be the heart of everything they did. At the community centre, I want to create something called the Storybox, Emma explained to Robert. People can write letters to their future selves, or leave encouraging notes for others who might need them. They can share their own stories or write about their dreams. Robert's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. Your grandmother always said that. Everyone has a story worth telling. This would be a perfect way to honor that. The next week, Emma called a meeting in the village hall. She was nervous about speaking in front of so many people, but Robert sat in the front row and smiled at her whenever she looked his way. Emma told the villagers about her plan to turn Gran's house into the Millbrook Community House. She explained about the story box and the classes they could offer. She talked about continuing Gran's work of helping people in the community. Mrs. Wilson raised her hand. What can we do to help? Dear. Soon everyone was volunteering. Tom from the corner shop offered to donate food for events. Father James said the church would help with fundraising. Lucy, who was home from university for the summer, volunteered to help teach computer skills to older people. The work began. Immediately, Emma used her savings to buy paint and supplies. Robert organized work parties where villagers came to help clean and fix things around the house. Emma painted the walls bright, cheerful colors. Yellow in the kitchen, blue in the sitting room, green in what would become the children's reading corner. The wooden letterbox was carefully restored and placed on a special table in the front hall. Emma made a beautiful sign that read the Storybox. Share your story. Find your voice. Next to it, she put blank paper and pens so people could write whenever they felt moved to do so. During the renovation, Emma found more surprises in Gran's papers. There was a bank account Emma had not known about, with money saved specifically for helping young people go to university. Gran had been planning to start a scholarship program, but had died before she could make it official. Emma called her Aunt Helen, her mother's younger sister, and told her about everything she had discovered. Helen lived in Scotland with her son, David, and they had not spoken to Emma's family in years because of some old argument. I had no idea Mom was doing so much for people, Helen said through tears when Emma read some of Gran's letters over the phone. We were both so stubborn. I wish I had known how much she wanted to make things right with our family. Double quotes. Helen and David came to visit the next month. They sat in Gran's sitting room and read all the letters together, crying and laughing as they remembered old times. They talked about the silly fight that had kept them apart and realized how unimportant it seemed now. Gran would be so happy to see us together again. Emma said daughters autumn came to Millbrook. The community house was ready to open. Emma had created beautiful posters advertising reading classes, art workshops, and computer lessons. The Storybox was already full of letters from people who had stopped by during the renovation. Emma read some of the letters before the opening day. There was one from a lonely old man who wrote about hoping to make a friend. Another was from a young mother who wrote about her dreams of going back to school someday. A teenager had written about feeling different from other kids and hoping to find where she belonged. On opening night, the house was full of people. Emma stood in the doorway and watched children reading books in the corner, adults chatting over tea in the kitchen, and teenagers looking at the art supplies Emma had set up in the back room. Robert came up behind her and gently took her hand. "Your grandmother would be so proud," he whispered. Emma smiled and squeezed his hand. She had found her purpose, her community, and something that felt very much like love. Emma climbed the narrow stairs to what used to be Gran's dusty attic. But now the space looked completely different. Bright white paint covered the walls, and cheerful yellow curtains hung at the small window. Comfortable chairs and soft rugs made the room feel warm and welcoming. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with stories for children and adults to enjoy. It was hard to believe that exactly 1 year ago, Emma had found Gran's wooden letterbox in this same room. That discovery had changed everything about Emma's life, and the life of everyone in MILLBROOK. Today was the anniversary celebration of the Millbrook Community House. Emma could hear voices and laughter floating up from downstairs as people arrived for the party. Children ran through the hallways, and adults chatted over tea and homemade cakes in the kitchen. Emma picked up a letter from the small table beside her chair. She had written it last night, but she was not ready to put it in the story box yet. The letter was addressed to my future granddaughter, a child who did not exist yet, but who Emma hoped would come into her life someday. In the letter, Emma had written about all the lessons Gran's letters had taught her. She wrote about how love continues even after people die, how forgiveness can heal broken hearts, and how every person has something important to say if others will just listen. Robert's voice called from downstairs. "Emma, people are asking for you." Emma smiled and put her letter in her pocket. Robert had been by her side through everything this past year. Together they had organized reading classes, art workshops, and writing groups. They had helped dozens of people learn new skills and share their stories. Just last week, Robert had asked Emma to marry him. He had proposed in Gran's garden, right beside the rose bushes Emma had helped plant when she was 5 years old. The whole village had cheered when they announced their engagement. Emma walked downstairs to find the house full of people. Mrs. Wilson was in the kitchen, serving her famous apple cake to a group of children. Tom from the corner shop was showing some teenagers how to make sandwiches for the elderly people who had trouble cooking for themselves. In the sitting room, Lucy was reading a story she had written about going to university. She had received Gran's scholarship and was now studying to become a teacher. Her story made everyone clap and cheer. Father James stood up next and read a letter he had written to his younger self. In it, he wrote about the importance of listening to people's problems and helping them find hope. "Your grandmother taught me that sometimes the best way to help someone is just to sit with them and let them know they are not alone," he said. Emma watched as person after person shared their stories. There was the old man who had been lonely but now had many friends through the community house activities. There was the young mother who had learned to use a computer and found a job working from home. There was the shy teenager who had discovered she loved to paint and was now planning to study art. Robert came up beside Emma and took her hand. "Look what you started," he whispered in her ear. "Not me," Emma said. "Gran started this long before I was born. I just helped it continue." Emma looked across the room at the storybox, which sat in its place of honor on the special table. The wooden box was fuller now than it had ever been. Inside were hundreds of letters from people all over the village. Some were letters to future selves, full of hopes and dreams. Others were encouraging notes for people going through difficult times. Some were simply stories that people wanted to preserve and share. Emma had read some of the letters over the past year. There was one from a woman who had survived cancer and wanted to tell others not to give up hope. Another was from a man who had lost his job but found a new career he loved even more. A little girl had written a letter to her future grown-up self, promising to always be kind to animals and help people who were sad. As the evening grew late, the guests began to leave. They hugged Emma and Robert, thanking them for creating such a special place. Children carried books they had borrowed from the library upstairs. Adults made plans to come back next week for the writing class. When the last guest had gone, Emma and Robert sat together on the front steps of the house. The village was quiet now, with just the street lights glowing softly in the darkness. Emma pulled her letter from her pocket. "I want to add this to the storybox," she said. They went back inside to the wooden box that had started everything. Emma opened the lid and placed her letter gently on top of all the others. Inside her letter, she had written about Gran's love, about the community that had welcomed her home, and about the future she was building with Robert. Some stories never really end, Emma said softly. They just become part of new stories. Robert put his arm round Emma's shoulders. Together they looked out the window at the village where they would build their life together. Somewhere in the distance, the church bell chimed midnight, marking not just the end of the celebration, at the beginning of whatever came next. Emma smiled and whispered to the quiet house, "Thank you, Gran. Your story lives on in all of us."